the Board Talk Podcast, Season 2, Episode number 5. We're going to talk about the art and necessity of audio mastering. And we got a heavyweight featured on this podcast episode, Mr. Rodger Willis of New Beginners Mastering. Let's go! Yeah, appreciate y'all tuning in, you feel me?
When I started with this vision, people thought I was a scrub. Now they show me love, you would think I was the plug. Now I got the keys and I'ma show you what it is.
Yes, sir.
King on this grind, you know I handle my business. You know I'm getting to these blessings, 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 blessings.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Kyren Monteiro. I want to welcome y'all to the Board Talk Podcast, presented by Frequency Canvas. Round of applause, man. Make sure that y'all check out the podcast on all platforms such as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc. Check out the high definition videos of the podcast being recorded over on the Frequency Canvas YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all. Now, once again, heavyweight on this episode, we got Rodger Willis of New Beginning Mastering. And when I tell y'all this is a dope episode, this is a dope episode, man. So I don't want to waste no time. We're going to be talking about the art and the necessity of audio mastering. So I'm going to get Rodger on the phone, and we're going to go ahead and get this thing rolling because I don't want to waste no time at all. I want to get as much time as we can with the legend himself, and I appreciate him taking out time out of his busy schedule. So let's go ahead and dial him in and get him on here.
Yo.
Mr. Rodger Willis, welcome to the Board Talk Podcast on Frequency Canvas, man. Round of applause for Mr. Rodger Willis, man. How you doing, sir?
What's happening?
Now, for everybody who does not know, we got, once again, Rodger Willis, New Beginning Mastering, professional master engineer, legendary, has worked with some of the top gospel artists of all time. I'm going to just read down just portions of his resume and his credit list, man. He's worked with people like Donnie McClurkin, Shirley Caesar, Commission, John P. Key, Fred Hammond, Kim Burrell, Jonathan McReynolds, Ty Delaney, J.J. Harrison, Bishop Paul Morton, William Murphy, E. Dewey Smith, P.J. Morton. And the list goes on, man. Another round of applause for the legend himself, man.
Come on. Praise God.
Hey, man, I felt like twisting and busting rhyme on that thing. I was about to have to take some breaths, man. Work on that breath control. that list is long, man. How you doing, sir?
Man, all is well, man. How you doing?
I'm doing, we breathing live and well. First off, I got to congratulate you on your nomination for Master Engineer of the 2023 for the Video Awards. Round of applause for that, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, salute to that whole team. Without that.
Well, let me interrupt you and congratulate you. Let me get some applause on that.
He said to do it. So I'm doing what OG told me. I'm doing what Unc told me, man. You know, hey, shout out to Derek Huggins and everybody at the with the Video Awards and that whole organization and everything connected to it for
yes, sir.
honoring mixing and mastering engineers and people behind the scenes in the gospel community, especially on big and small levels. Rodger is very passionate and a huge advocate for the audio engineering community being represented. And
absolutely,
I mean, that's why he's part of the reason he's on this podcast doing this, you know. And so, Rodger, man, this episode we're going to be talking about the art and the necessity of audio mastering. But before we start diving into the technical stuff and, the big boy talk, tell us about yourself. You're from Peoria, Illinois. You currently reside in Chicago. Talk to us about growing up in Peoria, Illinois. Talk to us about how you got your start in the music industry, man.
For sure. My family is from Peoria, Illinois, but I wasn't born there. My father was in the military, so I was born in North Carolina. But Peoria, Illinois is and has been my home for the majority of my life, other than my pre-adult life, I'll call it that. Man, music has been a passion of mine since I can remember my first thoughts. As a kid, back in the day when we had 78, 45, and 33 and third records, music was just a big part of my family, big part of my background and who I am. In the early years, post-college, I had a production company in Peoria called Infinity Productions, and we were very successful. I had some artists that I worked with there in the Peoria area, some Special K, Boston HUC, DJ Crush. I had a group called Friends, and quite a few artists, and we did some things that have yet to be duplicated from that time to this one. We did tours with Digital Underground and a lot of other artists of that era. Did a lot of shows, and it was a lot of fun, man. But I had to step away from it for a minute, but I'm back.
Now, for those who don't know, Digital Underground is what the famous legendary rapper Tupac came from on the East Coast. What was that like? That had to be crazy. Everybody can't say that. What was that like? What was that experience?
Man, it was bananas, man. The very first time we met them cats, we met them in Davenport, Iowa. We were actually on the show to open for Digital Underground. And man, they just treated us with so much love, man. It was like, we rode in a limo with them and they just treated us like normal people, and we were anything but normal. We were awestruck, starstruck, all kinds of struck. And, it was just great, man. It was a great experience. And, to be able to say, that I knew those guys, way back when, before, the famed Tupac, Shakur came out as a solo artist is amazing. When I met him, he was actually right in the middle of filming the movie Juice with Janet Jackson. I believe it was Juice. I believe that's the name of the movie. But whatever that movie was with Janet Jackson,
I think, was it Poetic Justice? Juice was the one where
Poetic Justice.
Yeah, Poetic Justice.
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that was the movie. It was during that time that we met.
Yeah. That's it's already legendary, man. You ain't even gotta read off the resume. The brother was around Digital Underground. That's legendary. That's consultation services right there. But let's speed up to today in 2023. You're a phenomenal master engineer. I know that you're a phenomenal master engineer, not only because of resume, but with us both being nominated as master engineers, I've had the honor to connect with you, and I feel like I've known you for a while. Your work has inspired me as a professional master engineer long before I had the privilege of building a relationship with you, and I'm sure many can attest to that. And I think mastering is often times misunderstood to be the same thing as mixing, or misunderstood in the sense of like the necessity and how vital it is to the music production, record production process, to films, to podcasts, wherever it might be. So, my first question for you is, what is audio mastering?
Well, I can tell you what it's not. Let me start off with saying what it's not. And a lot of people believe that mastering audio is essentially just making it loud. And that's just one of the biggest lies that's ever been told. It's way more than that. It could be that may be an element of mastering, but it's not mastering, so to speak. First of all, a mastering engineer, his setup or her setup, in the case of a woman, there are actually a lot of great female mastering engineers out there too. Their setup, their environment, their gear, their chain, their speakers, and all of those things that factor into the things that we use to make decisions about what we hear tend to be at a much higher level than your average, particularly in the independent music world, mix engineer. A lot of guys are mixing records in their bedrooms and in the kitchen, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when when it's time to take a record to a commercial place, we got to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. And so what we hear and what that person, the producer or the musician or the artist heard, is likely to be different because of all those things that I just mentioned. And so, in our environment, our environment tends to be a little more tuned for what we're using it for, the gear, the conversion. All of the tools that we use are just, they tend to be at a higher level, giving us the best chance to make the best decisions about what needs to be done to this music before it gets into the hands of the consumer. So essentially, our job as mastering engineers, to go along with what I just said in terms of preparing the music for consumer consumption, all of those things that go into that. And then there's also a lot of administrative types of things that we have to do in addition to that. For example, there may be encoding that we may need to do for ISRCs, and we may have to do DDP images for, CD replication. There may be submissions, to media base, and all sorts of things, so it's our job to make sure that everything's spelled correctly, that the record flows in sequence the way it's supposed to flow in sequence, and that we're embedding, graphic and metadata information and all those sorts of administrative types of things that go along with mastering. So, it's a lot to it, and it's definitely technical. It is creative as well, although I wouldn't say as creative as a mix engineer, but it's certainly creative because we definitely imprint our sound on the music. And ultimately, it's our job, man, to just birth the music the way the artist and the producer envisioned it. 100%. That's what our job is.
100%, man. That is 100% correct, man. To follow up behind that, why would you say that audio mastering is important?
Well, I think it is very important, particularly given what the average mix how the average mix, comes into being. If I take away all of the administrative things that I just mentioned, sometimes depending on the production of the record from beginning to end, it's a well-written record, it's a well-performed and recorded record, it's a well-mixed record, and then by the time it gets to us, sometimes from a creative standpoint, there isn't a whole lot for us to do other than to possibly maybe bring it to a commercial level so that it's competitive with other things that are out there in the genre. So one of the fallacies of mastering is, a lot of young mastering engineers feel like they have to do something. I got to use all those tools, that I have, or we have to use all those tools that we have, or maybe we're not mastering, when that actually could be further from the truth. The job is really to do what's necessary, and if there isn't anything that's necessary, then maybe we'll do very little, other than what we do to prepare for commercial release. So it's really important to make sure that when the music hits the atmosphere out there in the public domain, that people can hear it the way that it was intended, and that it competes with other records that are in the genre.
100% agree with that. I'm gonna follow you up with another question that I know you're gonna have a lot to talk about on. What qualifications should a professional audio mastering engineer have?
Wow, now that's a loaded question. Well, the first thing I'm going to say for sure is that there are tools that mastering engineers use, and frankly that mix engineers use as well. But I think that if you have to have a firm grasp on just studying music and knowing what music is supposed to sound like, particularly in the genres that you work in. A lot of mastering engineers, they're genre-specific mastering engineers, meaning that they only do hip-hop, they only do pop rock, they only do gospel, or whatever it is that they do. But it's really important to understand the genre of the music that you work in. understand what that sounds like. Study that music, and so you have a reference in your mind of what the music is supposed to sound like. And then, of course, naturally, it becomes really important to understand how to use the tools of the game. In the mastering world, it's all about EQ, probably more than anything. The number one tool is EQ, because we have to learn how to use EQs and various types of EQs in order to be able to shape and correct what we need to be able to shape and correct, so that we can reach a place that we're trying to get to. Then, of course, there's always compressors, and there's various types of compressors, and multi-band compression, and stereo compression, and mid-side, and all those sorts of things. And then, of course, there's limiting and potentially clipping and all sorts of other tools in which we use in mastering, that you really need to know how to use them. This is not the place where plug-in presets is going to get you where you're trying to get to. This is not that place. So you really kind of have to know some things in order to be successful. I kind of say this all the time, man, and one of the things I say is anybody can get lucky. You know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes that preset might be just a ticket, but will that preset work on the next song and one after that? So you really need to understand, what it is you're trying to accomplish and what tools you're going to use in order to be able to reach the end game. And a mastering engineer, or mix engineer, actually, the thing is all about chops. It's all about being a solution provider. Do you have a solution to the problem that's in front of you? And the more solutions you have to a problem that's in front of you, or solutions that you have, to address something that you're trying to address, the better you are as a mix and mastering engineer. And that's where experience comes in. It's like, hey, I've heard this before. I know exactly what to do, what tools to use, and how to use them. So there's so many variables when it comes to music, man. That's where the experience comes in. And mastering engineers, many of us have been mix engineers, and so we've just graduated, so to speak, kind of to a place where we have a firm grasp of the fundamentals of all the tools that get used to make music. I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I got.
No, man. I think that's good. To add more depth, I guess, to what you were saying. If somebody wants to get into mastering from your long experience, which is very validated, what do you think are some qualities that somebody definitely needs to be able to do? I know you said, definitely knowing how to use EQ and being technical and knowing music. Is there anything else that you would say, that somebody needs to like have in them to be successful at mastering?
Man, there's so many different directions I could go with that. But in its most simple terms, first of all, anything that you do in this life, man, if you want to be successful at it, you have to have a passion for it. It's really important to really want to do this, because it's not, as you know, the most glamorous job. There are very few organizations out there that even acknowledge us. And so, if you're looking for a pat on the back and all of that, you might not make it. But it's really important to really like and want to do this and have a passion for it. But in terms of just, the person that might be listening to this, wondering how do they get into mastering, it starts at the beginning. There are a lot of fundamentals that you really need to understand before you get to this place. And so, when I teach young guys are interested in mastering or interested in music, I start at the beginning. I make no assumptions about what anybody knows, because it's really important that because in today's world with technology, man, you can get far down the road without understanding any of the things that got you, where you started. And, it's real easy to, quote unquote, get in the red today. It's real easy, to start recording, and it's real easy to call yourself mastering, but what it is you may be doing, but you don't know why. And so it's really important to know not only the what needs to be done, but the why it needs to be done. And so for the way I'm put together and the way I'm built, it's all about really understanding what's going to happen before you even do it. when you push a button, when you turn a knob, when you instantiate a plug-in, or you do whatever you're doing, you should really know what it's going to do before you even do it. So really, it just comes back to, and I'm gonna keep coming back to the fundamentals. That's what's important in order to be a great mastering engineer.
Man, look, I can't add to that, man. I can't. Look, round of applause. Round of applause for that, because that's I feel like so many times right now people don't have fundamentals in this game, like, because everybody's, you know, it depending on your level of financial income, you know, everybody has. It's not a secret no more as far as the tools. So we all can find out the tools of the trade. Don't mean you know how to use them. Don't mean don't mean you have the fundamentals. But we all got access to the same plugins, some of the same gear. And it's just like everybody's using everything, but just because you have those things doesn't mean that you have the fundamentals embedded. So salute to that. Unc, I gotta ask you this: when is a mix ready to be mastered?
Let me jump in before I answer that question. Let me jump in and chime in on that last point a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's a great mixing engineer. Or let's just stick with mastering. A great mastering engineer, man. I don't care what tools you give me, I can master a record. And this is where having a firm grasp on the fundamentals comes into play, because we all know that there are good, better, and best out there in terms of gear, plugins, etc. We know that. We all understand that, you know, there's a wide variance in the quality of the gear in terms of what your budget can afford. We get that. But when you're a fundamentalist, you understand how to live within capabilities of the gear and the plugins and the tools and whatever it is you have. You understand how to live within the confines of what that piece can do. Okay, so, you know, we learn to live and we learn to understand what the sweet spots are, because we have a fundamental understanding of what we're trying to do in the first place. You know, how I push my rig may be completely different how you push yours, and so forth and so on. But we have to understand and learn that. And so many people feel like, well, the answer to getting better is the next thing that they're going to buy. It's like, oh, hey, have you seen this new plug-in? Have you seen this new piece of gear or whatever? And that's somehow going to make you, better just because you acquired that piece of gear. And it's like, no, frankly, you should be able to master a record with the stock plugins that come with your DAW and do a fantastic job. You should be able to do that. And if you can't, you got work to do. Now I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
That's 100% facts. That's 100%. Now, speaking of DAWs, moving into the question that I asked next, when is a mix ready to be mastered? Because there's a lot of people, you know this because you've been doing this a while. You know, there are people who submit things to mixes to master, and they think that mastering is going to save the day. Now, I'm not going to lie. You know, a great master engineer can definitely help a mix out a lot. You know, somebody like yourself who is definitely, I would consider, a creative master engineer. You know, you definitely leave your imprint in the sound. They're going to feel and hear Rodger Willis touching that record when they get it back. But we know that there are mixes that have no business being submitted for mastering. So, like, when can a producer, artist, mix engineer, whatever, say, like, this is ready for mastering? This is good enough to send over?
Well, if they're saying it's good enough, it's probably not ready. Let's start there. You know, because one of the very first questions I ask my customer, be it the producer, be it the artist and themselves or whoever it is, my first question is, do you like your mix? And if so, tell me what you like about it. And then I want to know what things about your mix don't you like? Because it's my first assessment of whether I feel like the mix is ready. Because if they tell me, man, you know, I just kind of want the drums to be, you know, much bigger. I need my background vocals in my face. You know, I need this, that, and the third. And if I don't get that in the mix, then it's not ready for mastering. Plain and simple. If you don't like your mix, then you certainly are not ready for mastering. I'm not saying that your mix has to be all super loud, but the elements of what it is you the elements of what you expect should be in your mix. If you want powerful drums, you should expect some powerful drums in your mix.
Right.
I can make them even more powerful, but I can't necessarily bring to life something that's not there. In other words, if your drums sound like a piece of paper, don't expect big drums coming back from mastering. Don't expect that. That's unreasonable. In other words, and I don't mean to offend anyone with what I'm about to say, but don't give me Whoopi Goldberg and expect Halle Berry back. Don't do that. And I
Sorry, I had to, man.
I got you. No, but that happens a lot, man. You know, and there used to be a time in my career where I wouldn't challenge the customer or you know, go through this inquiry, you know, to find out where they feel like their mix is, and sometimes the expectation that they have coming back from mastering is unrealistic. And so I feel like part of the due diligence as a mastering engineer is to understand what the expectation of the customer actually is, and what they gave you or what they give us to master. Can we meet the customer's expectation based off of what they've given us? And that's a real important first step, you know, as a mastering engineer that we need to take with our customers.
100%, man. I love that. I got to hit you with this. You've been around a while, you know, and prayerfully you still going to be around a while. We in a time where artificial intelligence is becoming more prominent, even in the audio production field. What we're seeing more producers mixing. We're seeing more mixing engineers produce. We're seeing mixing engineers master. We're seeing more master engineers do different things. It's just we're in this spaghetti bowl time of people wearing different hats and technology just constantly evolving and stuff. Like, where do you see audio mastering within the next, let's just say 10 years, and the future of it? Because we know what it's been historically, but things are changing. So, like, where do you see all of these things going? Where do you see it within the next 10 years?
I do see AI playing a role. It already is, you know, in some ways. You know, you got to. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What happened?
What's that? Hold on. I have no idea how that happened. See what AI do for you? So AI is already in play. Somehow, man, I don't know how my iTunes library. I don't know how that happened.
It's all right. We keeping it. This ain't getting edited out. This is all raw and real right here.
Man, it was like on cue, right? But it's already in play, man, with all of these web-based submit your song and then do the master in like 2 minutes type stuff, man. You know, I'm not going to name some of them, but it's already kind of in play.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes you can get lucky with those. But the problem is there's so many variables when it comes to music. There's no standard. There's no right. There's no wrong. It ultimately comes down to what the customer wants and on how the artist envisioned his or her music. And I don't believe that AI is going to be able to play a big enough role to be able to replace a mastering engineer, because there's just way too many variables, man. With time, to me, AI works really well. It would work really well when all things being equal, there's consistency. It's consistently recorded well. It's consistently performed well. It's consistently arranged well. We're dealing with a lot of overproduced type music, and we have to figure out a way to make all this stuff work. And so these are the variables which to me factor into the hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of different scenarios where I don't think that AI personally is going to ever replace a mastering engineer. And I could be wrong, but I mean, I'm a tech, I'm a gearhead, I'm a nerd with swag, and I just don't believe that AI can replace, because to me there has to be, AI works really well when things are quantifiable. When like 2 + 2 is 4, no matter what you say.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's quantifiable. AI can give you an answer, can quantify and give you a result because it's a known. But what's not known is how people feel about music and what the artist feels and how he or she wants it to feel. Those are things that are not, and the artist can't even often explain it to a mastering or mix engineer. They just know. They don't speak our language oftentimes. So, long story short, man, I think it'll have a role. I think it will. I think if anything, man, it'll probably push away the amateur mastering engineer. I think that they'll probably find that they're not going to win if they're not willing to invest in the time and the energy it takes to really understand, what it is we do and how we do it, and becoming that solutions architect that I mentioned earlier. When you know how to deal with a problem that's in front of you, that's what makes you great. That's where greatness comes from. And this is where AI is just not going to be able to keep up with, man, earthlings and how many of us and how different we are and how we like our sound. And it's like, I can work in the gospel music genre or any genre, and every last one of my artists wants something different. The sound is different. Some people like a lot of low end, some people don't. Some people like a little bit, and some people, it's just all over the place, man. And I just don't see where, personally, that's going to overtake me, at least in my lifetime.
Okay. That is good to know. Because I agree with you, and but it seems like we live in a time period, especially like in where audio production lives at, music. People are jumping into podcasts like crazy, that's podcast production is another area where engineers could really get another stream of income. But that's another episode for another day. But in terms of mastering and music, it seems like we live in a time period where sometimes like good enough is okay with a lot of people, and people don't want to do things at the highest level. And I just don't understand why you want to, why people would like releasing things and doing things, not putting their best foot forward. You know what I mean? Like that
I do. And I do. I think I understand part of the problem there. And I think part of the problem there is budget. People don't realize, how much things actually cost until they start investigating.
So can let's touch on that real quick. Sorry to interrupt you. When it comes to, from what you've seen, how when an artist, and I've done episodes on this, but I want you to touch on it. If an artist is wanting professional mixing, professional mastering, let's just say independently, because there's a lot of independent people out, what should they be expecting to pay for each service per song that you've seen in your experience?
That's a sticky question.
On average.
It's still kind of sticky. I'm gonna try to find the escape hatch on this question just a little bit. Let me just put it this way, because there's a lot of things that come into play. Demographics, come into play. How much it costs to mix a record in LA may not be the same as it costs to mix one in Iowa. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily mean that one mix engineer is better than the other, but it's just from a demographic standpoint, it just kind of like, hey, this guy doesn't have the overhead, and all of that goes along with living in Iowa that the guy in LA has, so sometimes we assume that people who charge more are better when that's actually not always the case. So we got to look into why a person is charging what they're charging. So it's hard for me to want to like throw a real rock solid number down there. I would say based off where you live, well, when it comes to, man, it's hard, man, because I don't want to offend anybody. And it's a lot of variance. But I know great mix engineers that are charging, $300, $400, $500, and I know some that are charging $2,000, $2,500, $5,000. Now, somebody might say, why would somebody pay $2,500 or $5,000 on a mix? Somebody might say that, and the question is the guy that's charging $2,500, 300% better than the guy that's charging $500, or whatever, is he exponentially that much better to justify that price? Some of it is, based off of the brand that the mix and mastering engineer has established for himself. If you got a string of hits, and everything that guy or that lady touches turns to gold in terms of the technical part of what it is you're asking them to do, because we can't make up for a bad song. We can make a bad song sound good. If it's a bad song, nobody wants it though. But at the end of the day, the question is can we consistently do what we do? That's the question. And people who have budget, there's a reason why, people buy Mercedes and Lexus and, other, fine automobiles. Well, everybody, there's one's transportation and has a driver's license that can drive one's a vehicle. But the reason why people buy those is because other people can't. That's why. They don't want to drive what everybody else can drive. And so when it comes to services like mix and mastering, there are people with budget. They don't want to go to the person every time Dick and Harry can go to. They want to go where you can't go. And most of the time where you can't go is going to be better than the time Dick and Harry's. So they'll pay more for it. But I know I'm like dodging the question, man.
No, that's fine. Really that's fine.
It's a lot of variables there. What I will say is this: if somebody tell you they mastering for $50, it's probably not mastering. So, if somebody tell you they can do your mix for $25, $50, no, that's just way. Even at the lowest price, that I feel like somebody that would be at least an average mix engineer, just on average, I just can't see anybody mixing anything even on average for less than $250, even if they just an average mixing engineer. If you got a mix engineer that I feel personally, that's a good mix engineer, if they less than 500 to mix, I just don't see him being less than 500. Now, the guys that I work with on a regular basis, they're more like, 800, 900, 1,200 a mix. But that's just that's the circle that I run in.
Yeah, it definitely, and things like if you're working with a label or if you're independent, right. That because you got
that absolutely matters. Yep. That absolutely matters because, man, a lot of these labels, man, they're on terms. They net, 30s, and that 30 turns into 60 and sometimes into 90. And so, what I expect to charge a label tends to be a little more.
Yeah.
Because of that.
And that's fair. Before we wrap this thing up, I gotta throw in this bonus question. That's not on my list to ask you for this episode. You're very adamant and passionate about representing the audio engineering community in the gospel arena and abroad. I don't think that my first nomination as a master engineer from the Avidity Awards this year in 2023 would be possible without people like yourself fighting for people to be noticed and people to be seen by the industry itself. What I guess let me figure out how to phrase it. Why do we need to be seen at award shows in different places where records are being and artists are being recognized more? Like, why is it important for engineers to do that? And why are you so adamant and passionate about pushing for that? Because there's not too many people that are pushing for that. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, to me, I'm not necessarily the type of cat that needs a pat on the back, that needs, accolades, that needs all that sort of thing. But I also feel like there should be fairness. And if you're going to recognize people that are integral, with the production of a record, then you ought to recognize everybody that's integral in the production of a record. They shouldn't. The industry should not pick and choose who is going to recognize and who is not. And unfortunately, today there are a lot of organizations that recognize people who actually have absolutely nothing to do with the production of a record. No shade on anybody. Whatever you do, if you're being recognized, that's great. But I just think it's a slap in the face to an engineer who can't get recognized or is not being recognized on a record that let's say, for example, is a number one record, but the person who did the artwork for the cover artwork is being recognized. Now, I'm not knocking the artist, but the artist didn't have anything to do with the making of the record. The reason why the record is a number one record certainly isn't because of the artwork. And so my passion comes from the unfairness of this whole situation, and how is it that they can choose to acknowledge some and not others? I could care less. I mean, personally, I don't care about being famous or anything like that. I do want to be known for what I do amongst my colleagues and people in the industry to do what I do. My goal is not fame. My goal is fairness.
Man.
In a nutshell.
Give credit where credit is due. I mean, that's even biblical. You know what I mean? It's very biblical. I lied to you. I'm sorry to you in the public. I got one more question for you. I'm sorry. It just came to mind while you were talking. Why? There are a lot of engineers in a lot of places. No shade to anybody doing this because I know some personally, and there's a lot I don't know. But there are people who are devaluing what we do by charging extremely cheap rates, and it's messing up the market. Can you tell people why they need to stop doing that and degrading what it is that mixing and mastering engineers do? Because personally, in my opinion, and if you don't want to answer that, then I respect it. But in my opinion, I think for people that are charging far below standard rates, it makes it hard for other people, and it just seems to mess up the market everywhere. And like you said, if you mixing for $25, $50 a record, mastering for $25 a record, it makes it hard for, even if people are way better than you, it makes it hard. So what is your take on that and just everything,
Got you. I think the first thing I'll say about that is, earlier in my career, I was much more sensitive to that. Because of course, naturally, we're all out here, trying to eat, we're all out here trying to compete. And it is really a bad situation, man, when you have completely unqualified people who are offering services to the unsuspecting customer. And that customer feels that they're going to be able to get what they could get from a you or I, and they've come to find out that they couldn't get it, but there are people out there that are doing these sorts of things, and they're blowing the budgets of these already stretched budgets from these independent artists. And then they don't even have the money to come to us. And then they want to come to us and they want to cry on our shoulders and tell us about how they lost so much money, and can we give them a deal? Because of the decision that they made, but they're blaming it on the person who took advantage of them, unfortunately, instead of blaming it on themselves. It's a twofold problem. I mean, they can't, in my opinion, put all the blame on those people, because there's a reason why, people like yourself and people like myself and others, are out here doing what we're doing. So I used to be a lot more sensitive to it, but I've learned that if I allow myself to be too sensitive to it, I'm allowing people to determine my value. And what I've learned is I am not going to allow anyone to determine my value. If my price is too much for you, well, God bless you. Maybe one day we'll be able to work again, and maybe one day we'll be able to work in the future. I'm just not for you right now. Maybe one day, when you get a little more bread, you can come see me. But I'm not going to be mad, and I'm not about to be changing my prices. I'm not about to do all of that. I'm not going to compete against a guy that's charging somebody 50. We ain't even in the same bar prices. We need to not even talk because we're just not. I'm not. There's nothing for us to talk about.
No,
if you want to go to somebody that want to charge you $50, then you should go ahead and do that. I'm not even going to knock the guy or the lady or whatever because I don't know nothing about them and I don't really care. But at the end of the day, I know what my value is, and it's not that.
Yeah,
we too far away, and so I just respectfully decline. I just literally did it last night. I just respectfully declined. I was like, well, bro, I understand, man. You got to live within your budget, and I would never ask anybody to be irresponsible, and spend what they can't afford. If they can't afford me, they can't afford me. And if I go to the Mercedes lot, I can't go to the Mercedes lot with a Kia budget. I can't do that. I'm stop. This ain't got nothing to do with faith and God. This got something to do with what's real.
Just business at the end of the day. It's not
business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a whole nother episode that we got to do as far as like the business of of audio production, because it's a lot of people teaching how to work, ratios and all of that, but people want to be their own bosses. It's like, well, if you go start an LLC, you're a boss, you're a CEO, you're a business owner. There's things you got to do. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but
it's all good.
But you're right. It's not. It has nothing to do with faith. It has nothing to do with spirituality. Like it's business at that, because it's crazy. Like people they'll come and say, "Oh, Rodger, Kyren, I got bills, I got kids, I got a car note." So do we.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to do this in my business. So do we. You see that $10,000 piece of equipment that Rodger uses? Well, it takes electricity. It has to be maintenance. It takes time. You got to make money off of that. There's so many things that I don't think people realize, how to do stuff. I say my advice to, on that is like people have to separate time. You're not paying us for how long it takes. You're paying us for our creativity, our years in the game, the brand, the skill set, the gear. You're paying the resume. You're paying for all of this. You're not paying me for how long it takes. There's no price on time. I can't put a price on time. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny that you say that, man, because, I had a customer not too long ago, when I told him my prices, and he asked me how long does it take for me to master a record. And I told him, and he's like, man, if it only take you X, why are you charging Y? I said, because you're not paying me for my time. You paying me for what I do. That's what you're paying me for. Because of where I am and because of what I've learned and where I find myself today, I'm able to do in much less time with somebody who is much less qualified than I am. Might take them a day or two. I could do it much quicker. That's where experience comes in, and again, this is what people do. They try to put a value on what you're worth, and you just can't allow people to do that to you.
No, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
You just can't.
You can't.
So if people want to be penny wise and pound foolish, then just go ahead and let them do it, because the unfortunate thing is like, when you put most of the time, man, when you're dealing with a customer like that, first of all, they're your worst customers. Nothing you can do will ever satisfy them. The ones that you actually make money on, that respect you and value you, are your best customers. Not because they pay you, but because they have a realistic expectation and understanding about what it is you're going to give. And when you give that to them, they're happy right away. But the person who really didn't want to give you that money, and they pressed you for it, and they finally decided they want to give it to you, those are the ones that's going to be your absolute worst nightmares. And so when I encounter people like that, and I know they trying to lowball me, I cut them off and just tell them, no, we're not a good fit, because I already see what's going to happen down the road. If I would have talked that person into spending that money, they were going to be a nightmare customer, because there's nothing I was going to do to make them happy.
Yeah. 100. Man, we got the one and only Mr. Rodger Willis, a new beginning master, man. Round of applause, man. Round of applause, because I appreciate you. Just so y'all know, I hit him up this day that we're recording and said, hey, you got some time? And he made time to get on this thing. He told me that he would, and we want to try to get him back on here. Mr. Willis, where can they find you at on social media? Where and how can people contact you if they want to inquire?
Man, you can find me. I'm working on my website, so y'all forgive me. I mean, I know, right? I'm on my head for that one. But you can find me on IG at Mr. R. Willis, and you can find me on Facebook at Rodger Willis, Rodger with a D.
Okay.
So RODGER WILLIS. You can find me, primarily those two places until such time as I get my website.
Okay. If somebody is not on social media, because there are people who may not have Instagram or Facebook, maybe they only have LinkedIn or whatever. How can as far as business wise, how can they get a hold of you to inquire?
They can reach me at my email address, which is Rodger Willis 1 RODGERWILLIS 1 at mac.com, MAC.com.
And I will make sure to include that in the show notes. And one thing we're gonna end is we are both master engineers, but not haters. So yes, even though I'm a master engineer here at Frequency Canvas, should definitely hit up Mr. Rodger Willis and New Beginning Mastering, because he has paved the way for cats like myself, and we're going to carry this thing forward, man. I appreciate you being on here. For the listeners, y'all make sure to check out the Board Talk podcast, which is available on stuff like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc. If you want to see the high definition video of this podcast being recorded, head over to our YouTube channel. Check out the HD video of that. Make sure that y'all follow and reach out to Mr. Rodger Willis, a New Beginning Mastering, the legendary master engineer himself, and we appreciate y'all joining. And that's this episode. It's a wrap. Appreciate y'all.
Man, you call me legendary one more time on the Cash App, you Doc.
Legendary. And that's how we end it, man. We got,
yes,
by
sir.
the way, just real quick, he is the most heavyweight guest to bless the Board Talk podcast so far. This is season 2, episode 5. Season 1 had 10 episodes, so this will be the 15th episode. And so we've had
I'm honored.
We've had the legendary Israel Music. We've had some music producers doing their thing, but he is the most heavyweight guest so far in the history of this podcast and almost last year, man. So round of applause, man. Y'all be blessed. Y'all be blessed. Y'all be blessed. Remember, audio mastering is vital. Audio master engineer is important. And salute to all the master engineers, mixer engineers, and everybody doing their thing, man. Much love to y'all.
Much love. Appreciate you, man.